Welcome to episode 3 of the Out of Bounds podcast here on FingerLakes1.com. We're coming to you guys from the FingerLakes1.com studios in Seneca Falls, New York. I am here with resident Tony Finau disliker Josh Durso. Josh, welcome as always.
You didn't call me a hater. That's a plus. Upgraded me from lunch. That's a benefit.
So for any of our new listeners this week, last week, Josh went on and talked about how Tony Finau was the most overrated golfer in the field. What does he do? Goes and wins, sets the tournament record at the tournament last week, the Rocket Mortgage, and well,
not by a little either. Like he didn't win by a little.
Yeah, he won by 5. So let's go back and let's revisit where we were last week of that clip. Paul, I think you have it back there for us. Let's show it.
I'm staying with my prediction from last week in that I think if for those who watch the power rankings week in and week out on the PGA Tour, Tony Finau is like the 3rd or 4th most favored golfer in the field. I'm saying that don't go in on that. Avoid that at all costs. I think he's the most overrated golfer in the top 15 right now.
Josh, the floor is yours.
Avoid that at all costs. I forgot about that line. Yeah, so obviously not one of my best picks out of the 2 weeks that we've been going on here. I'm leaning back into my previous pick history earlier in the season when I was obviously before the podcast when I was doing a lot better. But my apparent distaste for Tony Finau is not specific to Tony Finau. It's specific to a certain type of golfer that I think we're going to talk more about later in the show, where we have these guys who get streaky hot. And there's all this buzz around this guy being the best. He's the best right now. And then they just kind of fade off into the night, and they're just kind of like the mid-card pro for the foreseeable months and years that follow. I'm standing by it, though. I'm definitely not going to pick Tony Finau in any more events, or pick against him, I should say, in any more events to try and assure that he actually does lose at some point. We can't have him winning every tournament, every week in and week out. He's not playing this weekend, so there's that. We know someone other than Tony Finau is going to win this weekend because he's not in the field.
My biggest takeaway from it is that I think Tony Finau might be an out of bounds watcher, listener. So Tony, if you're listening, let us know somewhere, and we'll get you on the podcast. That'll be a good time. But moving on from that, I'm glad we got through that.
That is not a conversation I would be too anxious to have.
Oh, I would love it.
Me personally.
Let's move on to the PGA Tour schedule was released for next year, and I think there's a ton of highlights out of it. Most importantly, you take a look down the field events and all higher purses, and I would say each one of almost all of them. Paul's got it up there for us. If you take a look at those purse events and how much more they've kind of paid for each one of them, it's more directly aligning with what the LIV Tours wanted to do and kind of getting more money into the players and into those pools. Yeah,
I think the problem there becomes the LIV Tour has like an unlimited bankroll, and if the PGA Tour ever did get to a point where they were like actually competitive dollar for dollar, the LIV Tour could simply turn around and just spend even more money.
Right.
There's a few, Paul, if you want to throw that back up there, there's a few events that got like shifted around. The Rocket Mortgage is actually moving way back into like June. So instead of it being the end of July, feels like August. That's going to be happening in June. There's also obviously a lot more attention being placed on the fall slate and that fall round of tournaments. Chasing tour cards and things like that, trying to put more emphasis on it. I think the challenge there becomes some of the feedback that we've already started to see on social media, golf Twitter over the last like 12 hours or so since the schedule was released, where some of the players are saying like the fall schedule just doesn't make a lot of geographical sense, where they're all over the place. They're, in Mexico one week, they're on the West Coast, and then they're over in Asia, and they're just kind of bouncing all over the place rather than it being a more succinct kind of like, okay, we got the West Coast swing in the early spring or late winter, I should say, and then we kind of transition into like the Southeast and then the Midwest, and eventually getting into the northern half of the United States when it finally warms up. I think that's probably where the PGA Tour will spend a little more time next year tinkering and getting right so that this fall series that they're trying to create makes a little more sense for the guys who are going to be playing in those events, because remember, that's not necessarily for Rory McIlroy or Jordan Spieth or Justin Thomas or your top tier guys. Those events are really geared more towards your up and comers, the guys who are fighting for position on the tour the following year.
Yeah, i.e. James Hahn, who was very, very, very vocal on Twitter the last, 24 hours about how he feels about the schedule. But my biggest takeaways from that, too, is you finally have an event on there in the Players' Championship that matches what the base value purse is for the LIV Tour events. So they're $25 million each. The Players' Championship is going to be the highest purse regular season event last year, and that's going to be $25 million. So that's going to be interesting to see. And then my next takeaway, boy, isn't it great to see Rochester, New York on there?
Oh, yeah.
Doesn't that just make you happy? Because be at Oak Hill next year for the PGA Championship. I can't wait to be there. I will most definitely 150% be there, and I can't wait for it. And it's just nice to see a place so close to home on the schedule.
Yeah, and your point about the players having a little more money thrown into the purse there, I think it's something we've talked about the last couple episodes. It's another step closer to the players basically becoming a major, like basically being that important because of how much money is involved. And obviously it's a really strong field and everything like that. So it makes sense. I think the tour will probably have to, if they really want to try and compete with LIV on the dollar side, I think they're probably going to have to find the money to create 2 or 3 more of those throughout the year. Can't just be like a 5th tournament that has a really big purse beyond the majors. I think it's probably got to be, LIV has a total of 14 events. I think you got to try and get at least in like the 8 to 10 event range throughout the year where the purses are as large if you want to play that game.
Right. And yeah, I don't have the stat in front of me, but I'm pretty sure Patrick Reed with a 5th place finish at LIV Bedminster this week. I think he made, between that and the team event with him, I think he made pretty close to what Tony Finau made for winning 2 PGA Tour events.
Yeah, and
Very close.
There have been stats like that being thrown around a lot on golf Twitter over the last, I believe it might have been Patrick Reed comparison. In the 3 LIV events that he's played in, he'd be sitting at 4th in the PGA Tour money list for the season just from participating in 3 events. So I mean, that's going to be a challenge, I think, for the tour to try and keep up with LIV on the money side. It might be a tough egg to crack.
Right, for sure. All right, we'll get more to the LIV Tour later, but let's stay close to home, and talk about the Rocket Mortgage a little bit. Like we said earlier, Tony Finau gets his 4th career win, 2nd in as many weeks. Sets the tournament scoring record at the Rocket Mortgage with 26 under par in 4 rounds. Pretty much kind of walked away with it in the last 18 holes. You ask anybody in that field, they're going to tell you Tony was the best player all for 4 days. He deserved to win. I should talk about my prediction since we've already talked about yours. I said Adam Scott. I liked Adam Scott a lot. He played really well for 3 out of the 4 days. He just had a really tough day Saturday, ended up T37. So hey, I finally made a cut on the show, so that's a good start for me. We'll see where I go with in this next upcoming tournament.
Maybe that's what I need to set my sights on, just making a cut.
Yeah, like I said last week, just pick a guy in the LIV Tour and you'll make a cut.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing too with Finau getting that 4th win in Detroit is 5 shots clear of the field. Like he didn't win, just barely get by and win on Sunday. The week before it was much more competitive. It came down to the last day, even though he had basically a day where he went nuclear and the rest of the field kind of stumbled a bit. Coming down the stretch, it wasn't really a tournament at that point. So kudos to him. He played the best and he got that W, that much needed W.
Yeah, and you brought up a good point earlier when we were having lunch. You think if Tony Finau can manage to win the FedEx Cup, that would require him to win a playoff event, or maybe even 2 playoff events, that he could be in contention for Player of the Year. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that kind of goes back to golf since the core Tiger Woods era, which I'll put basically like late 90s to late 2000s. Since that ended, golf has been very prisoner of the moment and trying to find that next big thing, that thing that's going to be like uber dominant and just be the thing that all of the attention is on. And what we've seen since basically 2010, 2012 is that they're just basically like golfers that come and go. We've got plenty of golfers who are exceptional talent, generational talent, clearly. But it's interesting, say Tony Finau does get another win in the playoffs. Maybe he doesn't win the FedEx playoffs outright, but he's got 3 wins, recent wins that people are remembering. There's going to be people who say he should be considered for Player of the Year. And it's wild to me because it doesn't hold a candle to what Cam Smith has done or to what Scotty Scheffler has done or even what Rory McIlroy has done. So it's just, it'll be loud because it'll probably be the most recent, unless one of those 3 names that I just mentioned make a run in the FedEx Cup playoffs, meaning like they get really hot and they're like in contention every single weekend. There may be some folks who say, maybe Tony Finau is Player of the Year if he does get a win at some point over the next 4 weeks.
Yeah, I'd be surprised too. I think, like you said, Scheffler and Smith have done just so much in terms of winning a major and just been consistent all year, where I would be surprised if Finau was able to dethrone one of them. But I guess it could happen. It would probably require Finau to win, I would say, 2 playoff events, which, I mean, he's hottest golfer in the world right now. I wouldn't put it past him.
So branching off from that, do we think he's turned the corner? Meaning, has he gotten the monkey off his back so that he can be in contention and win? There's been some debate over the last few years about him being able to close lots of top 5s, lots of top 10s, lots of top 20s. A guy who's obviously not struggling to stay on the tour by any means. But until, 2 weeks ago, he only had 1 tour win, and he's not a 21-year-old. He's much older than that. So turn the corner, is that something that you're thinking maybe now he has, and we might see him in contention and maybe one of those guys who could win like 1 to 2 tournaments a year for the next decade?
Maybe not that much. Maybe not 1 to 2 a year, but I think he'll be a mainstay on the PGA Tour for a long time. I mean, if you take a look back at his resume, he was very good in the Ryder Cup last year. Yep. Played out with Harris English. Pretty sure he won a couple matches. He's right around 500 in that, but still was pretty solid. He's played well. All those top 5s you mentioned that he's had. A lot of those he was in contention on that final back 9 on Sunday. He got some really bad breaks and stuff. Yep. Which is obviously means a part of golf. I mean, you need those to kind of go your way too. But I think he could be a guy that can be a regular mainstayer on the PGA Tour and a guy that's consistently in the top 10 in the world. So I would be surprised if he just goes away, but I think he'll definitely be around. To what degree can be kind of questioned, but we'll see what happens.
Golf's so competitive. Right. It's so competitive right now. And a great example of that is a lot of comparisons after Sunday between Cam Young and Tony Finau. Obviously, Cam Young in his rookie campaign just putting up some absurd numbers, even though he's not getting the win attention. 7 top 3 finishes this year, and he's a rookie, like this first time around. That's so unbelievably impressive. I don't necessarily think there's a good comparison between the two, honestly. But do you feel differently about that, or do you kind of feel like they're 2 pretty different golfers in terms of what they're doing, or what they did, and what they're doing now?
I think there's a little bit of comparison, but I thought Cameron Young was so cool in the British Open, and on 18 when Cameron Smith was locking up that birdie, Cameron Young poured in I think it was like a 30-footer for eagle to get solo second, and that's a huge payday for him. Him dropping in that long putt and Rory McIlroy not making birdie on 18 meant probably $400,000 or $500,000. Yeah. And to a guy like Cameron Young, that's huge. And he was able to have the kind of nerves to pour in that long eagle putt. And, he knew that he was out of the tournament. He's 2 shots back on AT&T, and Cameron Smith's in line to make birdie. Yeah. He's got a 3-4 footer to make birdie. And Cameron Young is like, I might as well just knock in this 30-footer and make eagle and get a solo second. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and you want to talk about a confidence builder.
Oh, yeah.
That goes well beyond a single event or a single week. Like all of a sudden, you stood up in the fire and you did what needed to be done, even though you didn't win. But yeah, we are closing in on last week, final week. Wyndham, this is one of those. It's one of those interesting ones. Sedgefield Country Club is the host. In my mind, for a tour stop, it's another shorty at 7,100 yards or 7,100 yards. Do we have any favorites heading into this week? Obviously, there are a bunch of, we'll say top 10, top 15 FedEx Cup guys who aren't playing, taking the week off, recharging. Tony Finau being one of those guys. After 2 wins, he's gonna sit this one out. Do you have any major favorites, or are you just kind of sitting back and watching to see who might maybe pick up some momentum for the FedEx playoffs?
Yeah, I was kind of looking at that this morning, and one guy that really pops out to me is Siwoo Kim.
Oh boy.
Siwoo Kim won this tournament in 2016. Last year, he was in that infamous six-man playoff that was won by Kevin Kisner. He's got a T15 last week, T14 the week before. I like Siwoo Kim this week. That's my pick.
Yeah, and that reminds me, actually, I picked Kevin Kisner last week, and he missed the cut, correct? Yeah, that's how that worked out. So this week, I'm going with Will Zalatoris, and the reason for that is I think if you look at his scoring and the way he's played over the last couple months, especially in majors, he's been around. Like, he's just been in every tournament that he's just hanging around. And yes, there's a lot of talk about what his putting can and can't do, or, if it really is built to stand up in really high pressure moments. I think as long as he doesn't race up to the golf ball and whack at it like he's an amateur out there on Saturday, afternoon, in a six'em, I think he could have a chance. He's going to be my pick. It's not really, I wouldn't really want to call that a dark horse pick, but I don't think there are going to be too many people who think, Will Zalatoris, that's the first guy that comes to mind when they're trying to figure out who might be a winner this weekend.
You head over to DraftKings, though. He is the favorite. Him and Shane Lowry are tied at 14-1. Coming up behind him in the odds makers is Billy Ho, Sungjae Im, Webb Simpson, just to name a couple. This tournament has some interesting past champions, like I said last year with Kevin Kisner in that six-man playoff. Before that, you have Jim Herman in 2020, and in 2019, one of my favorites, JT, the Postman Poston, was able to take the victory there. So it's going to be interesting to see who can kind of come through, because these are some big points. And going back to Will Zalatoris, he's number 11th in the FedEx Cup standings right now, and that's interesting because in the top 10, they call it the Comcast Business Top 10, where they give away more money. I think it's a purse of like 20 million or 10 or 20 million. I'm not totally sure. Where they give away. So if he was able to jump somebody, I think it's Hideki, that's number 10. If he's able to jump Hideki, he'll be able to slide into that top 10 and make even a little bit more bonus money. So definitely some good incentive for Will Zalatoris to play well this week.
Yeah, and you mentioned the betting odds. I would love to spend a little bit of time on the show sometime in the next few weeks and look at how accurate those wind up actually being, because it seems that from week to week, like Webb Simpson, I believe, is in the top 5 to 10 favored guys this week, and
around 20-1, I think.
He's been playing for what most could say is abysmal golf this year, other than a little bit of success.
He's a champion here, though.
Right, and that's kind of like, that's one of the things that's always considered, which I don't necessarily know matters that much, given how competitive pro golf is now, with how deep the field always is. Like, it's not like there's this dramatic fall off between the 30th best guy and the 40th or 50th best guy.
Yeah, when Jim Herman won in 2020, I think he was a really big long shot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. So Zalatoris from you, and Siwoo from me. Let's see who goes in the third round of the out of bounds predictions. Oh, actually, let's go over to Paul. I think we know who he's gonna pick.
Oh God.
But I still want to hear from Paul.
Yeah.
As long as he's in the tournament, gotta go Ricky Fowler.
Ricky Fowler again. Poor guy's running out of exemptions. All right, so let's talk a little bit about LIV. Henrik Stenson gets the win. Big weekend for him in that 54-hole exhibition battle. Hadn't won on tour in 3.5 years. Goes over in his debut LIV tournament, LIV Invitational, and wins. Thoughts? What are the thoughts and feelings on that? On him getting W under those circumstances?
It's pretty admirable. With Henrik Stenson facing all this heat over the last course of the last week, and him to go over there and fire three solid rounds, excuse me, and to win that golf tournament is pretty cool. Henrik is definitely an outspoken player, kind of with those quotes after, I think I played like a captain this week, kind of turning his heels in the Ryder Cup a little bit. So I think that's interesting, but I think you gave it a little bit too much respect there by calling it an exhibition battle. I would call it a hit and giggle.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, there were some names in contention with this one, at least. I'll give it that. So we had Wolf and DJ finishing 2 shots out, Patrick Reed, Paul Casey, Sergio Garcia. They were 7 shots out, but still under par, which is another kind of interesting facet of this whole weekend at Bedminster is, around 16 guys out of the field of 54 finished under par. Everybody else finished over par. I think that says a lot about the quality of the field. Whether you want to take that a step further and say that takes away from Stenson's victory, I think, you win, you get your money and you move on. And I think that's pretty much all LIV is about at this point. There's some other aspects to it. Stenson saying he played like a captain. He's not even the captain of a LIV team.
Nope.
So, sure, I guess go ahead and get that jab in there. But Team Europe has moved on, obviously, with Luke Donald. So, I don't really see the point. And the other thing too is like going back to that really lengthy statement that Stenson made, a couple weeks ago when this whole thing broke. It really seemed like he was trying to play both sides. If you went through and read that entire essay that he published on Twitter, but truth be told, when he had the opportunity, he got the jab in as soon as they put the microphone in his face. It's like, okay, obviously, the respectful kind of boundary that you tried to make apparent in your press statement when the announcement was made that you were going to LIV, you forgot about that, and now I played like a captain, huh?
Yeah, I think I would have done the same thing, though, if I was Henrik, kind of thinking back to what situation he was in. One thing I want to highlight, low light, I guess, is Phil Mickelson. He put up 3 more rounds in the 70s. Let's give him 1 round under par in his 12 LIV rounds, or 9 LIV rounds, excuse me. Yeah, it's just brings up the point. Do you think Phil Mickelson picks up a golf club on like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday?
At this point, probably not. Probably not,
He doesn't need to, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's, unless there's events that he's doing or whatever the case may be, probably not, right?
He plays the Pro-Am. Well, they had a Pro-Am this week, and then plays the 3 days of LIV Golf, and then enjoys his money. So I guess you can't blame him. Yeah. He did what he had to do to get there, and that's the kind of the path he chose.
Yeah. Team golf. Can LIV make that a thing? Can LIV make that work? Because it's interesting. LIV tweeted out the winner, and then about an hour after that, they tweeted out the team winner of the weekend event at Bedminster. Can team golf become a popular thing with the mainstream golf fan, or even just the mainstream LIV fan?
I think so. I think it's kind of another fun thing to root for, and kind of something that can be kind of fun to align yourself with. I would like to talk to like a person, I should say, that's kind of like a LIV golf fan, and really ask them if they worry about, like, if they go and follow the 4 Aces every week, if they go follow Dustin Johnson's team or Stenson's team or the Majestics or anything like that,
right?
And see if that really does, like, quote unquote care to them, or if they really are just looking for a guy they like, a guy they respect to win that golf tournament individually, or if they really do kind of look into the team aspect of things.
Yeah, I think in my mind, to cross that certain threshold where it's normal or understood by the average golf fan, I feel like there needs to be a lot more of it, right? Like, we need to see it over a longer period of time. So LIV needs to be around. The PGA Tour is probably going to, down the road, start incorporating some kind of like team events throughout the year, just to try and compete with LIV. Just guessing, they're probably going to try and do something a little gimmicky down the road.
Yeah, they do the Zurich and Zurich, and people like that tournament.
Yeah.
Do a 2-man, yeah.
So, like, I think time will help with that. But again, I know there are some people who, after our first couple episodes when we were talking about, LIV and how do you as a fan follow it, I still think it's really hard to follow if you don't know the teams really intimately, if you don't have the sheet in front of you, or the basically the leaderboard pulled up in front of you. You don't know that Dustin Johnson, Patrick Reed, or Pat Perez are on a team, or who else ever could possibly be on a team. They're not wearing things that make them stand out. They're not playing together. It's, it's almost like the blind draw
Right.
It's like the blind draw element of it that you see at your local club. You're playing with a bunch of guys on a Saturday, and you blind draw off teams afterward. Until it's something that people can get invested in over a longer period of time, I think it's really hard to sell team golf.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's hard to do this year since they don't really know who's going to be in the field every year.
Oh, yeah.
Every week, you have guys like Charles Howell who just announced they're coming to the LIV Tour. So what they were thinking about doing, and what I perceive them they were going to do, is have a draft before each week.
Yeah.
And that, I think, isn't very good because one week Dustin Johnson's on the 4 Aces, and then he's on or not Dustin Johnson, but any of the other guys can be on different teams every single week. And if you're a Henrik Stenson fan who wasn't a captain this week, and he's on 4 different teams in 4 different weeks, you get kind of just confused as a viewer, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think if they can figure out a way where they can next year have, it's just challenging because then you need the same 48 guys to play every single week, and I don't know if that'll happen, and be on the same team every year, or every week, excuse me. I think that would be easier as a fan from that perspective to watch and follow along and know who you're rooting for.
Yeah, and there's a lot of elements, too, that team sport have that this iteration of LIV Team Golf do not. For example, permanent teams and trades and, free agency and all these things that make the storyline more interesting other than just sort of like your weekend pick'em kind of event thing where you're doing a draft week in and week out. It is very confusing, but there's also that element where you don't have that ongoing storyline to make someone become invested in a team. Why should I be invested in Dustin Johnson's team if he's going to have 3 different guys with him every week or 4 different guys or whatever it winds up being?
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's a challenge.
But one thing going back to the viewing experience, I think David Feherty was awesome. I heard a lot of good things about him on social media from friends that were able to watch it. I was only able to watch a little bit of the LIV Tour over the weekend. I was moving out of my apartment. Everyone knows how fun that is. So I wasn't able to catch as much as I wanted to. But just hearing his voice just kind of makes a listener feel more comfortable watching golf and listening to it, and kind of makes it feel like you're watching your traditional golf sense. So I think getting David Feherty was a huge success for the LIV Tour.
Adds familiarity.
For sure.
100%. And obviously his delivery is awesome. All of the Barkley stuff was put to rest last week after last week's episode, of course. And I think he's their voice as far as the broadcast is concerned. Until they go after, a quote unquote play-by-play guy, they have their color commentary guy. And I think it's a good start for LIV in terms of making that viewing experience, that streamed viewing experience, better.
For sure. So LIV's going to take a big break. They don't have another tournament on the docket until the first week in September. I believe it's in Boston. So let's shift our focus to the local side of things here around our area. John Miniga was able to win the Geneva City Championship. He defeated Mike Long I believe it was on Sunday at Geneva Country Club. He was able to take down him and win his first Geneva City Championship. There he is pictured there with the trophy. John's a really good player. If you're a fingerlace1.com frequent listener, you know that John Miniga was on with Jim Sinacropi about less than a calendar year ago on the Fingerlace One Sports podcast. Yep. So it's pretty cool to see John Miniga taking down Mike Long. I know they're good friends, and Mike Long has won the last 3 years. So it's cool to see John coming in there and taking that crown.
Yeah. A lot of good golf. Always a lot of good golf in the city championship up there in Geneva. That's one of those annual events that gets better than most media attention as far as local golf is concerned. And then obviously always has a really strong field because of, I would say, frankly, because of those, we'll call it half dozen-ish guys who are just really, really good golfers who play every year. And can go out and shoot some really, really good numbers on what are locally challenging golf courses.
Yep. I mean, Bill McDermott's been just a tremendous job with the Geneva High School golf team, and you see guys like Mike Long have come out. The Salone's had a couple of good kids. John Miniga now, Joey Marr, all these kids are such good players. So it's pretty cool to see, and I think he's won it a couple times himself too. So congratulations to John Miniga. What a great feat, and congratulations to you.
Yeah. And one last thing on the LIV I want to grab before we get out of here is we now know officially how much money Tiger Woods turned down. $700 to $800 million.
Yep.
Million with an M. Is that, it seems like a lot of people kind of jumping on the, he did the right thing bandwagon, saying like, oh, this no surprise, he's the guy. He of course always do that. But at this point in his career, could he put, he wouldn't have been able to play 14 events in a year. His body wouldn't have allowed him, right?
Right.
Just wouldn't have happened.
LIV didn't care though.
Yeah. Oh no,
Did not play an event for them, and they would pay him $800 million just to be Tiger Woods. But pretty cool to see Tiger decline that $700-800 million, and then next week he did that heel turn on him, where he bashed him publicly. So Tiger turns down almost $1 billion, and then trashed him in the public. That's something for Tiger that he almost had to do, though. I think Tiger Woods, but he's seen so much negative publicity over the last 5 or 10 years with some sort of stuff that's happened to him and all of that stuff. And I don't mean to get into that. We could take a long time getting into that, but it's pretty cool to see Tiger turn that down. And Tiger Woods would not go over there and go shoot 75, 75, 75, because that is not in his blood. He would go over there and hit 1 million golf balls until he won every single event, and he probably would, to be honest, because he's Tiger Woods.
Yeah. An update before we go on the golf bag giveaway, the Callaway golf bag giveaway. We will 100% have details on next week's show on how you can win it. We're going to get all that stuff sorted out. We're going to get the process fine-tuned. And hopefully 2 weeks from now, 2 episodes from now, we will be giving away a golf bag and announcing a winner.
Love that.
Love it. That's that.
Can't beat that. Another good way to find out more information on that and other good stuff going on here on Out of Bounds and FingerLakes1.com is head us over to and give us a follow on Twitter. Out of Bounds FL1 on Twitter is our main account. FingerLakes1.com also has a very good Twitter account too, and also follow us on TikTok. FL1 Sports, where I've been posting good stuff coming out of the show and some other good quality content too. So follow us there, and you won't ever be able to miss a beat.
That's right. All right. Well, that's it for today. You can also hit an email, outofbounds@fingerlakes1.com. You can also leave a voice message on Anchor if you want to get in touch with the show that way. For Nate Sharman, Paul Russo, I'm Josh Durso. We'll catch you next week.